On behalf of TechBharat team, a very warm welcome to the panelists who are very excellent panelists that we have put in together today. To give a brief about the topic, innovative solutions in medicine, let me give a small overview of the topic. Pocket-sized ultrasound devices that cost 50 times less than the machines in hospital, virtual reality that speeds healing and rehab, artificial intelligence that better than medicine experts at spotting lung tumors. These are some of the innovations now transforming medicine at a remarkable pace, and more are in the pipeline. No one can predict the future, but one can at least get a glimpse of dozens of innovation and concepts right now being tested before it is put on the public space. Like the people behind them, they stand at the vanguard of health care, neither exhaustive nor exclusive. The list is rather representative of the recasting of public health and medical sciences likely to come in the early 2020s now. To discuss and deliberate on the possible innovative solutions in medicine coming up in the next few quarters, we have put a great panel together. It's my privilege to introduce them. Dr. K. Chandrasekhar, founder Forus Health, Dr. Srinivasa Durasala, founder Cyclops MedTech, Mr. Mikhail S., founder Center for Research Utilization, Albanica AB, and Mr. Vidyashankar AV, CEO, Abhinava Group. Before I hand over to Dr. K. Chandrasekhar to moderate the session, a brief introduction. Dr. K. Chandrasekhar is the founder of Forus Health. He started Forus Health in 2010 with a mission to play a role in eradicating preventable blindness using technology. Today, with over 5 products across 36 countries and 2,400 plus installations, we have touched more than 5 million lives. Prior to starting Forus Health, we spent 20 plus years in the semiconductor industry working in technology, strategy, sales, and business development. The next big transformation is to build Forus Health into a digital platform company and use artificial intelligence to reach millions of people globally and be a global player in public health. Forus Health is already funded by marquee investors like ASL Partners, IDG Ventures, Asian Health Fund, and Team Fund. I now hand over to Dr. K. Chandrasekhar to initiate the in-depth session. Dr. Chandrasekhar.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity. It's a privilege to, be part of the panel and moderate a session with such an elite bunch of panelists who come from a variety of experience. So I'd probably start off the session by giving a brief introduction of myself and also ask each of the panelists to kind of introduce themselves for a couple of minutes. And then we deep dive into the session looking at 3 or 4 pertinent questions, which I would, expect the panelists to kind of come up with their answers, which will reflect on their experience and what they have done in the past and what they expect the future to be. So my name is K. Chandrasekhar, and I'm the founder and CEO of Forus Health. Basically, we worked on this problem of preventable blindness, and we're continuing to work on that. And we feel that the doctor-patient ratio, given that India has hardly 20,000 ophthalmologists, technology will play a big role. And by creating products, we brought in a change where affordability and accessibility to devices started off. And then when we want to really expand this, because we need to kind of screen people, not people who come to a hospital, but screen people preferably. That's where we can avoid the problem. So we have started to build a large digital health platform, which compromises of artificial intelligence, which can do automated deduction, home screening, application for connecting doctors and patients remotely and virtually. And then we want to move into disease management, because it's not only about screening people at the first time, but also ensure that chronic patients don't go blind because of lack of continuous care. So this is very briefly what we do. And I would like now to each of the panelists to kind of do a quick introduction, and then we can get deep into the subject. Maybe Mikhail, you can start off.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me to this panel and creating a change. And for me, meeting people in this way and in other contexts is a way how to create more innovation and real usefulness. And my background is not healthcare because I come from semiconductors and materials. But then 15 years ago, I started to become interested how to make usefulness from our research findings. So we made a technology transfer, then we made a startup, and then I participated in national innovation programs. So I started to think about this more and more, how to make usefulness. And one of the materials which we are developing is graphene on silicon carbide, and then we start to look at the surface, how to modify this for gas sensing and biosensing and so on. So we are moving into, but also this meeting other people, because I have an example from India where I participate in a project on additive manufacturing of composites. So it's nice, but that person also had a project on fighting COVID-19 using nanoparticles in surface coatings. And I was thinking, oh, can we not use the graphene which we have in Sweden, because we have industrial graphene, and try this in that case? So this innovation exchange creates various opportunities in different ways. So I have some experience of that, and that's why I'm very happy to have exchange with you also here in this panel.
Thank you, Mikhail. It's nice to know you have a semiconductor background. So I, prior to starting Forest, spent 20 years in semiconductors. So it's nice to know that there are people with the semiconductor. Maybe we should have another panel on semiconductors later. Now I'll ask Dr. Srinivas to probably give an overview of what Cyclops does.
So about myself, I'm a medical doctor. I finished my MBBS from Bangalore Medical College and MS in ENT from JNMC Belgaum. I worked in various capacities in both government and private hospitals, okay, which includes, of course, in the beginning in the Victoria Hospital and associated Bowring, then in MS Ramaya Hospital, and next in the corporate sector, that is, I was heading the department in global hospitals. It is about, so I was a full-time surgeon, morning till evening operating, and it was around 6 years ago that I took the decision of giving up on surgery and then taking this uncharted path of getting into this innovation. So me and Niranjan, okay, when he left his job and both of us came together along with Professor Nair to set up this Cyclops Tech. So what exactly we do is we deal with devices which are based on eye tracking, a goggle, head-mounted goggle which does eye tracking, and then using the eye tracking we help diagnose neurological conditions and also conditions leading to vertigo. Vertigo is a sensation of spinning, so there can be multiple causes of spinning. Most of them are in the ear or in the brain, and they are not directly accessible to inspection. Even if you do a scanning, you cannot see these kind of structures. So the only kind of window you get is through the eyes. So that is what we use that as an opportunity and do the device. The problem with us, okay, so I think this much of an introduction is enough. I'll take up the next things later. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Srinivas. And like with Mikhail, I have a commonality with semiconductors. With you, I have on the eye, right? So of course, we do work with the eye, but solving different problems. So again, nice to have you on the panel. Last but not the least, Mr. Vidyashankar, who heads the Anubhava group. Why don't you give a brief introduction, sir?
Ellargu namaskara. My name is Vidyashankar. I started my professional career with a medical company by name Microlabs. Most of the doctors are very familiar with Microlabs as a salesperson. And I was heading the hospitality also by the time I spent a decade of service with them. Then in 2001, I founded Abhinava Events, looking at the niche opportunity available for us to manage medical events across doctors like CMEs and across medical association with their zonal and annual conferences. Exploring the opportunities within the medical fraternity, we moved into medical technologies, Abhinava MedTech. Then we moved into weddings also, Abhinava Weddings. And recently, we signed an MOU with the UK government, with NHS and HE, for training nurses and doctors for a placement under a program known as GLP, Global Learners Program. And right now, I'm nurturing that particular startup. We are based out of Mysore, Bangalore, Chennai, Mumbai, and Delhi as offices. And God is great to work us with globally. And I'm very, very thankful for the Tech Bharat for inviting to be one of the panelists among the very excellent moderator and crowd. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vidyashankar. So I think we have a variety of experience in this panel, and I'm sure the panelists will be able to give their experience and expertise on innovation and how innovation can make a significant change, especially in healthcare. So I'll start off basically with a very fundamental question. And of course, the question is, how can innovation transform healthcare? And given that we are very specifically talking about medical devices and allied subjects, I would want each of you to kind of come up with how do you feel basically innovation can make a difference, how it's going to be relevant to a country like India today, and especially today, given that as a country and as a world, we have seen phenomenal change in behavior. Maybe about 15 months back, if anybody would have predicted that all of us would be sitting at home for like 3 months or 4 months and locked down and start working from home, nobody would have even kind of imagined. But there is a dramatic shift which things have happened. Some for good and some obviously for bad in the short and medium term. But I think this also leads, every catastrophe leads to innovations, and how mankind or humans work on this, use this as an opportunity to convert. So I would like to open up the session by asking each of you, how do you feel innovation is going to make a significant difference in this field of medicine or medical devices? And do you really think it is going to make a difference? Because, saying that is, like a powerful statement, but do you really believe? And if so, why do you really believe? And are you believing it today after COVID, or this was even before COVID, which is going to transform? So I think that's how I want to start off, and probably start with Mr. Vidyashankar to begin with. So why don't you start, sir?
Sure. Thank you, Doctor. So point here is whether my belief, my personal belief goes into innovation or not. So as a person who started the sales cycle as a professional career, so every day for a salesperson, like, different innovative ideas, which made me to a professional sales guy. So the unique sales points we used to carry to the market when we used to meet the doctor or the end customer, the points what we are trying to integrate with our scientific knowledge about the product, that is where we used to get clicked, and the sales cycle used to be more and more lubricated, as well as easier to push the product. And coming to the medical device exclusively, if I say, during the pandemic, it made us to believe more and more that anything which is connected digitally and remotely can bring in so much of powerful results. If you take a simple pulse oximeter, which made every doctor to believe that they can monitor patients remotely. The person who is unfortunately, had become a COVID positive and could not meet any doctor in person, used to communicate very well with their own doctor in WhatsApp media, telemedicine media, and sharing those pictures, the values, the biomedical values to that particular doctor and get the results and continuously monitor. And look at any other device which has come through pandemic. I think like more and more digital equipment companies, medical equipment companies who can bring in more values to the human health have definitely emerged as the leaders in coming years. This is where my belief for medical devices which can be digitally transmit the values of the human health have more and more put me into more and more belief, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. You've started with very pertinent points. So some of the things which we have also seen that, earlier medical equipment were primarily made keeping only hospitals and doctors in mind, right? But today we are also making medical devices for consumers, right? So the first change was the self-monitoring BP devices, and then we also have homemade, devices for your blood sugar measurement at home. So that's also transformed the way medical devices can be created. That also gives you, when you get into the consumer market, you're talking about a larger volume. So innovation is going to happen to make life easier for doctors to analyze patients, but also make consumer to continuously cross verify some of the key parameters, which will, help them to know where they stand so that they can take precautionary steps. So thank you for your points. Probably Dr. Srinivas, you being a MBBS doctor is far more qualified to answer this question. How do you see innovation, and do you see there is a need? Is there a gap where technologists can come, or doctors like you can come and make a difference? And how important it is to solve some of the problems, especially for emerging countries like India?
I can talk from the impact that our device has created in the medical field itself. We deal with a specific subject, vertigo, and the unfortunate part of this subject called vertigo is in the entire MBBS curriculum, there is not even 1 hour dedicated to the science of vertigo. And even in the postgraduate curriculum also it is there, but then most of the time it used not to be taught that well. So that was the state at which this field of vertigo was. And you compare it with the number of patients who come and walk into a general practice clinic with complaints of dizziness or vertigo or whatever it is. There are some times when it up to 5% of patients, even in a general practice, comes with some kind of dizziness or vertigo. And there was absolutely no correlation between the number of patients and the number of hours spent teaching or learning in our curriculum. That was unfortunate. Now, what has happened with this device is, okay, it is not just a device. In addition to the device, the company and company related activity, which is all around the device, has actually led to a revolution. Now, this device, which used to be previously present only in premium institutions, okay, and where also 1 or 2 people used to be dealing with them. Now, what has happened is tier 2, tier 3 cities. We have taluka places, taluka headquarters, which are having the device installed from the corporate hospitals, even in Dubai, even we have setups in the United States, everywhere. So it is a complete coverage from one center. We have in Africa, we have in the Middle East, everywhere. And in India, so from single practice to large tertiary care hospitals, we have. So that is one thing that this has done. Second thing, what I said is, the very fact that the device is available has led people to explore the subject deep. And we ourselves have a YouTube channel which has led to, which is one of the most watched channel in this particular space called vertigo, with several hours of video. In fact, my own masterclass has more than 3,000 views, and ours is a small thing. So ours is a small community of vertigo professionals. So 3,000 means that is a huge impact. And it has led to, in our company itself, we have trained more than 200 professionals who come here for the training and all this. what led to all these things from where less than 1 hour is spent in the curriculum, in the MBBS curriculum, to so many people actually taking interest and learning about this is the availability of this device. Okay, that itself has led. So technology, there are multiple ways of looking at how innovation and technology can be seen. And this is another way in which the availability of the device, that I can tomorrow do something with it, is leading people into actually becoming masters in the subject. So that itself is another perspective that I wanted to bring.
Thank you, Dr. Srinivas. I think I want to actually ask a follow-up question on this right away. Can't wait to push it. So I think creating an innovation for a problem which is comparatively less spoken in even the curriculum is great. But the real question is the fact that you have reached taluks to high-end hospitals. Is it true that you have to be very innovative in reaching people despite the fact that you actually have an innovative product? Because end of the day, if the product doesn't reach the intended purpose, it is of no use from that point of view, right? So do you think that innovation just in creating a product is not good enough, but you also have to have innovation in making people receive it, right? Is that also a very critical factor?
There are multiple things here. One is innovation, and two is, especially in India and abroad also, people respect character. Okay, people respect character. People respect people. They believe people who are reliable. Okay, so that is the most important thing. So when we look at, okay, I don't know whether we call it innovation or whether it is the grand old science, grand old things that has been taught to you in our Bhagavad Gita or in the Panchatantra or whatever it is, of just being reliable, being there. We are not just establishing. It is not a customer and a company relationship. It is actually a family. It is more of a lifelong relationship. That is very, very important. And so that has been our company approach, okay, to whom we have come. And every client who comes to us becomes a customer, becomes actually our ambassador. So how you deal with that particular customer is this thing. It is, and that dealing should not be out of like commercial interest, okay, because it has to be genuine. Even though sometimes it so happens that there are some sales where, as there is a saying, software will eventually work and hardware will eventually fail. Okay, and when that failure happens, how we deal with the failure will decide whether that customer is going to be our brand ambassador or not. So that is one thing. And knowing who are our fans and who are our supporters is very important. Fans are people who tell good about us everywhere. Okay, that is good. Then there are other people who are our supporters. These are people who don't go away, who stick to you and keep telling improvements to the product, that this, all those things. That is another thing. And as you said, is there an innovative approach? Yes, there is an innovative approach. Our educational programs have been our innovative approach. So we do a lot of training. So when we train, say, when we train 10 people, one of them may turn out to be convert to a sale today. But then eventually, 3 years, 4 years, 5 the line. Okay, just 4 days ago, we completed 4 years of our first installation. Just first installation, 4 years we completed. So, but then those days also we used to train people at that time who are not even potential clients at that particular time, but they are buying today. So that is our approach to sale. Is one of the key approaches which has been helping us a lot is a training in the science. And those people who take training will eventually become our customers. So at least some part today, some part tomorrow, some part after tomorrow, but eventually they become. So that has been our approach.
Thank you. So it's not just about innovation, it is also building credibility, right?
Yes.
Credibility
is the key. Credibility is the key.
So it's about people who build their credibility, the product's credibility, and meeting the intended use and solving somebody's problem, building credibility through that. Thank you. Very, very nice. So Mikhail, you come from not emerging country, but an advanced country. So is there a real need for innovation in this sector in advanced countries, or is it limited to emerging countries alone? Because the problem is big, We have constraints on specialized doctors. We also have constraints because of large population, and the per capita is comparatively lower. So, is there a need for innovation in the developed countries? And if so, why? And if not, what else you need?
Yes, there is certainly there is a need of innovation, and if we look into this planet, then we live all together on the same planet, so we have to survive together for these things. And if we have innovative approaches in some and experiences in some field, then actually knowing what are the challenges in India gives us thinking, what can we do to support or come with innovation and so on. And I have visited India several times, and even one case we did a road tour in a car, 30 hours, because my colleague wanted me to see the real India and get the flavor, not only visit the conference and so on. So I have seen many of the real things. But then we start to understand what our challenges, and when we have this exchange together and discuss things, here are needs, then maybe we can propose some technology solutions. And for us, that is a source how we can make innovation. And like in here, I know that in India there are many rural challenges and how to actually get people to use these innovative devices, because people on the countryside are very stubborn. I live on the countryside, so I know my neighbors are very stubborn, and I probably am also. But this is also one way for me to work with innovation from the countryside. Like, I don't need to be in the lab. And right now I'm sitting like here in the, this is my part in the forest where I live. And I work together with you on this exchange using the digitalization. So the innovation, it gives me an opportunity to find new routes for what can be done, possibly from my experience, and I can support with my learnings how to take one innovation to a market. And like in the previous question, how to make people to use this, then we can share those things. And if I say that I know this guy, I'm not involved in this innovation technology, but I know they are doing good, then the acceptance from, if someone asks me, it will be lower, and then they will more readily use this innovation, whatever it is. So certainly it is very important for moving ahead also here in Sweden.
Yeah, thank you, Mikhail. I think you brought a lot of important points and actually also led me to the next question. So I think a lot of times we kind of have a differentiation when we're talking about an advanced or a market which is in the cities or premium cities, and then we talk about rural markets, right? So when you're creating an innovation, let's say in the medical devices space or in the medicine space, as an innovator, or as a need, do you think that there is a difference, or will you create two different products for the urban and advanced markets and one for the rural market, or you will do one shirt fits all kind of a situation? How do you think this has to be, and what is the right way? I know there's no secret sauce for that, but in your perspective, how do you see, how do we reach the rural? Because world over, the population in rural is far higher than the urban. So probably I'll start off with you, Mikhail, because you touched the point, and probably also get the sense from the other panelists. So do you think it's the innovation has to be different, or it can be applied, it can be common, and you just have to make a different way of reaching people, or you take cut and paste what you did in the cities or in the advanced countries? Which do you think is the right approach, or is there no approach which is?
I think I have one. My personal opinion is that if we have a good platform, then we can use that one to modify things. So if we find a solution for one particular case, maybe we can use similar concepts for another case. And at the end, there is a learning from the silicon development that you have the solar cells now based on silicon, But that would have never been developed unless there would have been transistors creating the big interest, and that lowered the cost of the material because everyone compares cost in the beginning. So if we solve some problems in big cities or where there's more acceptance and the technology will be used, then we can piggyback on that and use this for the rural areas where it's more difficult to motivate from financial point of view, because then you don't have the volumes and then it's more smaller markets, but we solve several things. But we use to solve a bigger thing to motivate why governments and so on should develop this platform thinking.
So you're basically saying that, develop it, but make it adaptable for, rural, and the economies of scale of rural will help you to kind of reach. Do you also think that you need to kind of modify your business models between urban and rural? Because if there are young innovators who are, listening to you and listening to this panel, what would you advise them? You would say that make the same product, but make it adaptable between cities and rural India, and for rural, just kind of make the innovation in the business model?
Yes, the basic business model for me is that who has the need? Who is the person who has the need? We don't want to sell a technology just to develop it, because there is a personal need somewhere, and it's different in the cities and it's different in the countryside. So if we focus, and those are the people who will actually buy this or adapt this technology. So then if we listen to what is the need in the city or in the rural or whatever, so we focus and make the business around that personal exchange and not numbers and economics and so on. It's the people.
Sure. So if you ask my experience, there have been two institutions which inspired me before starting Forest. And one, of course, was Arvind Eye Care, which is the reason why we started Forest. We were inspired by their vision. We were inspired by the problem they were chasing. And there was another institution which not too many people I have talked about. But one of the institutions which really inspired, at least me personally, was a company in India, an FMCG company called Kevin Care. And people in India know about Kevin Care. This was the first guys who actually came up with, sachet models of some of the fast-moving consumer goods, your shampoos, your paste, many such things, right? So what it basically did was that, a person who, could not buy 100 ml shampoo bottle because it was expensive, but still aspired to use some of these brands, right? He wants to use a Procter & Gamble, use a Colgate. So he still aspires, so he doesn't want to go down. So what they did was they actually brought it, a sachet, which was, for a one use. So he may not be using it regularly, but whenever he is using, he's still using the brand which, higher income person was using. So that was actually also, from a personal standpoint, my trigger that when you're reaching care to a rural person, whether it's in India or in Africa or in Latin America or even in the US, don't differentiate based on their ability to pay. Everybody has to get the same care, but probably sachet it so that the affordability becomes easy. So that makes people to kind of go and aspire and have the same care. So the best of hospitals in New York or Chicago also use the same product where a rural India or a rural Africa should use. So then you're bringing in equity among people. So that's what we kind of practice. So nice to hear that you are also having, Mr. Vidyashankar, you have been, working in India and also now working with the NHS. How do you feel about this? Do you need innovation which is different for rural, and is it the same? And what is your perspective on this?
Well, very valid point to answer here, Dr. Chandrasekhar, and continue to say, and reflecting to your previous question with Srinivas about how do you basically reach your audience end of the day? What is that you can create the credibility and other things. So, very classic example which I have to bring back from my memory from Microlabs is when Microlabs basically launched a product by name Tolfen. I think Dr. Srinivas must be very, very aware. Ibuprofen and paracetamol tablets. And we were launching that product. And maybe after like, even first quarter, second quarters, very, very difficult to sell and compete with MNCs. So our MD, those like Mr. Dilip Sarana called us back for the quarterly meeting. And he was just like, going through our sales books and saying that this is such a wonderful product. Why can't you sell this? So we told like, maybe the price, maybe the quality, and he was very, very taken aback. He just brought a, glass of water and made the strip to open and put that particular tablet into the water. And within no time, it has become a homogeneous liquid. So that basically the communication, what between the company and the providers, which made us to understand that a demo, a right communication, and adopting the right way of communicating it to the users also, which definitely brings a lot of success. Then we went back to the market when we were going to the government medical colleges, hospitals. We always used to carry a glass and like, a bottle of Bisleri, and we used to just give the demo, nothing else. And within 3 months, like, it just bypassed all the sales of any other brand, and Tolfen become the biggest selling brand, at least in our areas. So what I feel is, end of the day, the right communication and making the users to understand that the innovations and the technology has to be adopted to use. So many times what happens if you go to a doctor, a clinic in the rural areas, when we say about telemedicine, unfortunately, the network provider itself is not strong there. Maybe here, like, with the presence of so many Airtel brands or Jio and other, it has become more easier for to approach and launch a product in rural areas. So probably with a dual mind, like, if I can say that for some sort of communication and some sort of product which is coming to the digital medias, there may be a second version of product which can be adopted and which can be brought into the market. And continuous communication, education, and as Dr. Srinivas was very clearly telling that during his MBBS days, not even a 1 hour of study was made on this one, what do you call, like, the spinning and other things. But now there is a huge amount of education has gone into. So from the primary education, the innovativeness has to be brought into the channel, and it has to be seamlessly adopted by the users as well as the providers also. This is what my thinking, sir.
Thank you. I think you've brought some very interesting, examples. I think I'll switch to Dr. Srinivas. I think Dr. Srinivas, when you started off, you actually talked about big hospitals using and also taluk hospitals using. So when you designed the product, did you keep both the audience in mind and actually had two different products, or one single product went across? Was there a differentiation either on price, on features? And is there a need? What is your overall point of view? If you want to go deep, get into some of these really remote villages, do you think there need to be a different product or a different offering, or lessen of features? What is your take on this?
When we designed the product, the only thing that we were keeping in mind was that it has to be a point of care product. Okay, so it has to be used at the location where the doctor is there. Like the way he uses his stethoscope, his BP apparatus, and now probably a pulse oximeter or whatever. Okay, the headlight, whatever he is. So it has to be a point of care device. It should not be a device which has to be, for which a person has to be sent. That is one thing. The second thing about whether we need to make different features of the product for different thing. As you said previously, that everybody likes to use the same one. So we also believe in that philosophy. So features should not be different. But there is one thing that is happening in our space, in the Vertigo space, and as you pointed out, though the rural population is more than the urban population, but the rural population is spread out. So in the urban population, you can have a device in one location and there can be walk-ins. Whereas in the rural population, you cannot have that one location and walk-in. So I saw some, when I was in Dubai for a conference, there was in one of these European countries, they had adopted this principle where the same kind of device is kept in a mobile vehicle. So features, there is no difference in the device, but the way in one place it is, the device is in one place, people walk to the device in the urban setup, whereas in the rural setup, where villages are spread out and all those things, the device sits in a vehicle and the vehicle goes around, and that way the footfalls are, whatever footfalls or the wheel runs, if it is the other way, is taken care and the device is used. So I completely in sync with you that the product should not be different, the feature should not be different. I don't believe in toning down the product or whatever it is. So it has to be the same. But some things have changed when it comes to product innovation for rural areas that used to happen. When I was working as a faculty in MS Ramaya, the kids used to come from BTech colleges and tell, sir, I have made this for rural setup. And the key feature they would harp on about rural setup used to be that either a solar packet or some kind of a
battery operated.
Yeah. So, but now our country has made so much progress, and we have to pat ourselves on the shoulder where that kind of innovation is no longer relevant, because now there is, every village is covered with electricity. If not 24 hours, some kind of electricity is there. All that you need is mobile like rechargeable, and then they run. So that we have rendered that kind of innovation irrelevant is itself a credit to all of us, to every one of us, to have achieved this status in our country. And eventually data also is going to, there are places when I go, you don't get 4G, sometimes 3G, sometimes 2G also. But that scene is also changing. Okay, so I think eventually for less data and for power, this kind of innovations will not be required. But definitely delivery related innovations will need to keep coming.
Absolutely. I think you brought a very important point that, we may have to take, in cities you sell devices, but whereas you need to kind of make it available. So in eye care, these mobile vans and mobile screening and, point of care at home is now becoming more and more popular. So I think the more, and given that India is now getting more and more fiber optic to the last mile and even remote locations, I think this remote diagnosis and many of those things are going to become a reality going forward. Now, probably switching gears to get into much more glamorous terms, which if you don't use it in any of the health tech panels, then the panel is useless. So I have to use it, right? So let's get into those two terms. How do you see artificial intelligence and blockchain, let's say, playing a role? Maybe I'll start off with Mikhail. Is it a real requirement, or is it overhyped, or is it a necessity, but it doesn't require so much of hype, it will solve a problem, or is it really the next big thing? What is your perspective?
I think these are important and necessary steps how to move ahead really in a big concept. And some time ago, I came into contact with one guy working with digital twins. So when you have like a city and so on, or some bigger concept, then you make a digital copy of it and then you can modify in the digital copy. You can make changes, so you don't need to make changes in the city to test things. So all this artificial intelligence and blockchain will be useful for those things. But digital twin takes some time to build up. But all these learnings, which we can take from something concrete, and maybe if we have a lot of data from this particular technology, then we can use artificial intelligence for that to learn, to take the next step. So we actually build on something which is existing. And then when we have many steps, over time, there will be possibilities of having like digital twins of bigger concepts. So then I think these are things to be more familiar with, and we need to learn it and understand where to adapt it. So we take some real pilot cases.
Sure, sure. So you feel that it's going to get imbibed part of day-to-day technology, and it's going to get, over the next 2-3 years, you will find that this is becoming a normal stream. Of course, it requires a lot of competency to develop, but do you think this hype, this is going to be the next big thing, it is going to change the way it is? Do you still agree with that, or you feel that it is going to, it's going to be something which is like a must, which will be there, it will solve problems, but not to the extent people think it will it is going to dramatically change, or it's hyped about? How do you feel that?
Yeah, the more we see some concrete evidences, for example, like this case with the tablet in the glass and so on. So if we can show those things that people understand the usefulness of it, then it will not be as much hype thing and resistant, and then it will be a natural thing also in this, because this term artificial intelligence and blockchain, these are not known to most people. But if we can demonstrate it, look, here this data is used to modify this, so you can actually have more usefulness this for your particular situation, then it will be more familiarized and not as much hype. And overall, these things will be combined in different ways, so they will work together with other things in some way. And there, for example, the digital platforms, if you have digital tools, then those will act together, so people understand that they have usefulness of these things using these terms.
Thank you. Very, very important points. So, Mr. Vidyashankar, what is your perspective on some of these new technologies which are, is it going to transform, or is it the real need? Because India has still less number of doctors compared to what we should have. Or is it something which is, one of those hypes which is not going to create a much significant impact? What is your perspective on that?
As Mike was mentioning very clearly, unless until we demonstrate that it comes up with you, like, with a huge part of the data. But where do you get the data? Are our laws in the telemedicine or digital marketing or digital media have become more and more eased out for the user or a technology provider? Unless until we gather so much of data in place and have a great research, since Michael comes with both research and utilization of those data, definitely he will agree with me. Unless until we push so much of data into that particular technology and arrive at a standard sort of protocol and SOP to showcase that this particular artificial intelligence will result in some sort of positiveness. So to reach that particular point, I think even the private public partnership, people who are willing to, because like, when teachers go to the, in our India, teachers go to the houses and do the census, we don't even reveal how many members we live. And our ration card shows something, our Aadhaar card shows something. So the data what is collected, is that real, or basically there itself there are some sort of discrepancies are gone through. So unless until we come to some sort of point where government insists basically for the researchers that this is what is actually has to be taken to the citizens, this is what actually has to be conveyed to the citizens. Artificial intelligence definitely is required. I think as a medical device person in the ophthalmology, you will definitely agree with me that, like, there are a lot of things can be depicted from an ophthalmologist just by looking at the eye of a patient, the hemoglobin levels, the diabetic, the retina, so many things. So I am for it. But where do you get the data? Point number one. Point number two, when it comes to the blockchain, I think COVID again has very well proved that once you come to the vaccination part, have you basically made the product available in the right format from the manufacturing unit to the end user? How do you track it? I think once it comes to the market, definitely the user has to come with the right virtues of that particular product. The product has to prove that this comes from the quality background, from manufacturer, the producer to the end user, because it has to be maintained with lot of cold chain, so many, it has to adhere to the so many atmospheric changes. I think both AI as well as blockchain is our it has to come into the day-to-day life. I think it's just matter of time. Like once, maybe as you rightly told, pandemic has taught us a lot of good things and as well as bad things also. Adopting this AI as well as blockchain should be one of the best things through our pandemic, sir.
Excellent point. You also brought up important points on data privacy, security, how it is used, and how it is going to become very critical. Now, I'm going to go and ask Dr. Srinivas a very tough question. So is AI a threat to doctors or an aid to doctors as a doctor, right? If let's say for one moment, let's forget that you started Cyclops and let's think that you're continuing to be a surgeon. And if I come up with AI, are you going to feel threatened, or are you going to feel that I'm coming and helping you? What is your perspective on this?
So actually I can, there is something else that I want to tell is that I am doing a 1-year data science course.
Oh, nice.
And I completed 6 months just yesterday, and another 6 months of the course is there.
Is it because Dr. Srinivas is an entrepreneur today, or it is? Would you have done it when you were a practicing surgeon also?
See, you can't see. God has taken me along this path, and then probably at some point of time last year, I thought that this is something that I have to understand. Otherwise, it will be from inside. I need to understand this. Otherwise, it will just be what is being fed to us from outside, and that does not necessarily represent the reality. So, having said that, the moment you say, see, if I'm a doctor with no data science exposure or whatever it is, the moment you tell, okay, artificial intelligence is coming, the way it is going to it is going to sound to the doctor is like, okay, you are going to render me irrelevant. Actually, the fact is that is not the case, and that is not going to be the case in the foreseeable future or the future after foreseeable future also. What exactly is the role of a doctor? Okay, and how technology has changed. In that technology, artificial intelligence is just part of the technology. Okay, let me tell you about from my own personal example. You will be surprised that when I was doing MBBS, okay, it was not many years ago. Okay, I'm not very old. I'm 45 years, just finished 45. Okay, I don't know whether it is considered old or young, but I prefer not to
compare to me, so you can make that statement.
Okay. When I was doing MBBS, okay, that was from 1994. Okay, I joined in 1994 and then completed in 99. The way we used to diagnose thyroid, we had to actually admit the patient, and patient is sleeping. Once you have ascertained that the patient is sleeping, you go and you take a pulse. This used to be called sleeping pulse rate, and to make a diagnosis of thyrotoxicosis or whatever, and then tomorrow morning we have to report to the professor. And that was the reason for which we used to actually admit the patient who had come. And from there, now it is simple blood test. It changed very rapidly. It changed very, very rapidly. Okay, at that time only it changed very rapidly. Well, while I was MBBS was going on, it changed rapidly. 2, the way we used to treat a diabetic ketoacidosis, and a life-threatening condition called diabetic ketoacidosis used to come to the wards. And the way we used to do is there used to be something called a Benedict's tube. We had to take 5 ml of Benedict solution, put 8 or drops of urine into it, boil it for exactly the same amount of time, keep a chart, check the color. Based on that, in the urine, okay, we catheterize the patient, collect drops. Every hour we used to do that. I have personally taken care of patients like this and assess what is the blood sugar level based on the urine sugar at that particular point of time. And then adjust the insulin level or give the next bolus of the insulin. This is how we used to, and we have saved lives. Today that is out of question. Today you have simple blood prick. You don't even have to depend on the urine. Take the pulse, and then monitor it. And then the way the insulin is given is also different. There are pumps and all those things. None of these technological changes actually turned out to be a threat to the doctors. They became enabling resources for us. Enabling. Who wants to keep whole night keep testing the urine, or who wants to admit the patient just to check the sleeping pulse rate? Now, if you want 24-hour pulse rate, also it is possible patient can give from the home with one simple device. So that is even if you want to go by that, if you don't want to go for this. Now AI is also going to be, eventually it is going to be successful, and it is going to be this thing. And the way that it is going to work on is not things that we can even envisage. Like for example, in a routine way, if you take our book and probably convert it into an algorithm for decision making, for COVID diagnosis, you may put loss of smell into the algorithm. Whereas if you ask the AI engine to develop, it may take totally, it may be black box technique or it may be a white box technique, whatever it is. But you may be surprised if you do use a white box technique by the kind of feature that it used to actually find out or make a diagnosis of COVID. For example, I used to talk to patients during the COVID period, when the peak season was there. There used to be a lot of patients who used to use one particular, not the loss of smell, but associated with lot of loss of smell, they would use some word which will tell suddenness. In Kannada, they used to say dhidir, some kind of suddenness. So there is a suddenness and there is a loss of smell, and then there is a context. So who knows, in the engines here or whatever machine learning algorithms or whatever it is may start picking up these patterns and the patterns that we have been conditioned or programmed to think. That is one thing. Now what is going to happen to the doctor? Doctor's role is going to be the role of the doctor that used to be when Sushruta practiced, when Charaka practiced. They could not diagnose, they could not treat as many conditions, but they used to be the most respected in the region, most respected in the country. The reason was they used to be those people who would hold the hand, support the family, support them, and all those things. So that role of doctor is irreplaceable. No artificial intelligence is ever going to do. And there are sometimes we scold patients. Half of my patients, there are some people whom we cajole, there are some other people whom we actually scold, because that is the only way in which we can. So AI cannot do all these things, but AI can simply tell me that this is the diagnosis. But then there are other things, hand-holding, cajoling, scolding, whatever, ultimately to get the result. So the threat that is generally felt is because of, as Vidyashankar sir was telling, is more about communication. Once you communicate what exactly is the possibility, it is just another technological innovation, just like thyroid, just like blood sugar level assessment, which is going to come, which is going to help us only. It is never going to threaten us.
Absolutely. I think real great points. So I think my 2 cents on the whole thing is, doctors are people who are definitely very scarce, right? In India, for still this kind of population, we have still limited number of doctors. So there are a few things which only the doctor can do, like apart from, also giving the confidence and the touch and care. There are a few things, surgeries and treatment, many things only the doctor can do, which is irreplaceable. Now, today, the doctor has to do many things to go towards the final. Now, if those things can be either, earlier we were using, some of the nurses who were qualified to do a lot of activities. Now, if that also can be, few of them can be done by artificial intelligence, then the doctor focuses only on care, right? And what only he can do. So I think we as a country will benefit in ensuring that we touch large population of people, and without dramatically need to, if you have to serve this whole country with doctors, we may have to increase the MBBS admission like 5 times or 10 times, which is not going to happen. So I think understanding from all of you, I think it is going to be an assistive technology. It is going to be like a stethoscope or a BP monitor, which changed the lives of the doctor, made diagnosis far more easy. AI is going to actually play a role. But if you project it as, oh, it will replace the doctor, that is where we are going wrong. I think that is the communication becomes important. So we've spent a lot of time. So let me touch the last section, which is, I think, the most critical. And starting off with you, Mikhail. Innovation, technology, AI, blockchain, rural, urban, all of these are very critical. But as an innovator, unless I have a good approach to go to market and ensure that the device or the software or the hardware or the app or whatever AI is meeting the intended purpose, it is not going to still solve the problem, both commercially and also from the impact standpoint, right? What is your take on, or what is your advice on how to go to market? Let's say I looked at a problem. I found that there was a gap. I went and made a technology. It could be hardware, it could be software, it could be anything. Now I have that. Now, how important is this go to market, and what is your advice? How do you think a young innovator should, because I'm very passionate about the problem I'm solving. I think I have got the right product, right? Whether it is a solution or a hardware. But I think if I don't do the go to market well, which is both from commercial point of view and also from an impact point of view, very critical. How do you think, what is your advice to an innovator, right? What should he do?
Yes, the basic motivation or advice, what I is that start to move, because we can do planning and thinking that this will be useful for solving that problem. So then we can start to move in this direction. And one learning which I had from a professor working with climate crisis and sustainable technologies and environmental technologies is that no one can predict how to solve these things. But if you start with something and then you say that I have the intention to solve this problem, and then you start moving, this is the best effort you can do, which is the most realistic. And like in business, in many cases, when you start with an idea, you go towards this market and then try to go there. At some point, someone will come and say, oh, I would like to buy this part, which is here. I don't want to buy the whole thing. I only want to buy this one. Then that becomes the business and how something went to the market. So getting started so we understand more and listening to those. So you are doing the networking so people become aware of what you are doing. Then someone will pay for this and it will reach a market. And in case it takes longer time than expected, then this is a learning, because the next thing you do, the next innovation, maybe that will reach the market more likely because you have experiences from the previous case.
So will you, as an innovator, because you're solving, let's say, a public health problem, right? Will you go to a private selling, or will you actually start with the government, right? Is it right? And more so, I would also ask the same question to my India colleagues. What is the right approach? So is it good to jump directly to the government, or start with the private, build the credibility, and then go to the government? How do you see that?
I think both are important. Like in Europe, sometimes we have these decisions from European Commission and so on, and those things drive the change. For example, the phasing out of the light bulb and so on. This was decided, but it would never happen if we ourselves would make the business and develop technologies. Then it would have taken 20 years longer than these things. But at the same time, the governments or the regions, when they focus on smart specialization strategies and so on for regional economic growth, they need pilot cases, something real to start with. And if we can show individually. Let's make this private activity, and then we show that this happens, and it is a part of a value chain, and this has relevance for the region and nationally. So then both need to go hand in hand in some way.
Excellent point. Mr. Vidyashankar, what is your take on this subject? Is go-to-market a very critical part in the entire chain of development, and with all these new startups and all these people coming, how important it is, and how important is the success of this, right? Companies getting their go-to-market right.
Yeah. It's a very connective point which we need to definitely discuss. And I take a live example of this particular pandemic season. So during March, when the lockdown basically got announced, few of the technologists who were known to me, headed by Mr. Raghavendra Prasad, approached his contemporaries to come out with a project known as Step One. Probably you might be knowing both Dr. Srinivas and Dr. Chandrasekhar. The project Step One, the three important components, what they brought is technology, people, and processes. So they only tried to solve the problem of the citizens. So keeping citizens in the mind. For an innovator or a person who brings out a technology to solve certain issues in the society has to understand the problem statement. Once that particular problem statement has been established and understood by the key stakeholders of that particular innovative company or the technology company, I think most of the problems will automatically get solved. And whether you work with the government or you directly work with the customers, it definitely has no so much of difference as such. So that particular technology, what Project Step One brought into people, it has made around 5 lakhs lives impacted in last 10 months. 7,000 volunteer doctors keep on calling the citizens, both outbound as well as the inbound. And they made around 5 million calls. They've established teletriaging, they established home isolation, they established the right plasma banks, they established the supporting the depressed patient during the this one COVID-19, and they come with the right connect, that is citizen first, the ownership, being nimble, and how, as Dr. Srinivas was rightly telling, can doctors be empathetic? The AI as well as blockchain can only give the directions, but a human touch can be the commitment what it goes into, the transparency what it goes. These are all the very, very important components, factors, which definitely makes the innovative ideas to reach the right citizens or right users or the audience. The government role here probably would to basically ease out the laws, the execution part, the decisions what they take on time. Unless in March, if the central government or the MCA wouldn't have taken the right decision on the medicine part, the whole pandemic would have been more pathetic for the innovators. But fortunately, everything came into place, fall into place, and people have come out of so much of pathetic time now. This is what is my thinking, sir.
Thank you. So, Dr. Srinivas, you have created products and got them into the market, right? So, is there a secret sauce you can share with the audience? So how do you go about doing that?
There is nothing called secret sauce or anything. But then one thing here is you begin with the end in mind is what I've always believed in. So begin with the end in mind is the end is how our product is going to be used, where it is going to be used. So that is, so actually where it is going to be used, how it is going to be used is clear. That itself sets the go-to-market strategy. Then you come back and innovate for that particular purpose. See, what used to happen when I used to teach in the medical college, whatever it is, again, there used to be people who come and meet and take ideas or whatever it is. It is like there used to be this one kid or like that, they come, see, I have made this, now find a purpose for it. Or they have a certain skill set. They have made something using or some knowledge or what some device or whatever. They know one particular sense. What is the need? What is it you want to make? And get the know-how, even if it is like entire story of Cyclops is we have identified what was the thing that we wanted to do, and there were a lot of resource gaps, knowledge gaps that we had, and we made sure that we filled those knowledge gaps, we filled those resource gaps, skill gaps, whatever it is, through learning to make what was needed. Rather than I have a certain expertise, I have a certain knowledge, based on this I can make this one, now take it to the market, doesn't work. It has to be the other way around. You have to be clear what is needed there, what you want to see there. And all of us, none of us are meant to know everything. Okay, teams are not, as when they begin, meant to have all the skill sets of whatever it is. Once you know what is clear, then from digital signal processing, it could be, or it can be like what you do, computer vision, or even hardware expertise, even for that matter, expertise in the device testing for certification purpose. All those things we built later on. We were very clear as to what was supposed to be there, but then we built the capabilities to cater to that, rather than I have this capability, I make this, now take it. That never happened. So that is the.
Thank you. So my my small experience on this is we have when we kind of looked at the problem and decided that this is how we will go, even though it was kind of implemented in terms of go to market in different ways, but the holistic picture of what the product should be was very clear right from day one. So we didn't have to make any modification to the product when we had to go into those business models or this go to market strategy. So that really helped, because we were very clear that if I want to solve this problem, this is how I want this to percolate. However, I'll start off here, go to this, and then after I achieve this, I'll go this. So that kind of methodology helped us, and we have continued to follow that methodology. So I think we have almost come to the end in terms of the time given by TechBharat team. So had a real wonderful session, extremely knowledgeable, extremely helpful point of views. Coming from Mikhail, touching different aspects, Mr. Vidyashankar looking at his experience on how he has built this whole thing and reached up to NHS, and of course Dr. Srinivas, who's a practicing doctor, left that and started a medical devices company to solve a particular problem, and has been successful with. So an entrepreneur looking at the space cannot have a better variety of ideas than what the esteemed panel talked about. Thank you so much to all of you, and thanks to the TechBharat team for giving us this opportunity. And I hope this session will inspire hundreds of young entrepreneurs or even old entrepreneurs like me to start something and make a difference to people. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chandrasekhar, for anchoring this session. It was indeed a very, very incisive and comprehensive deep dive session. I also thank your co-panelists, Mr. Mikhail, Mr. Vidyashankar, and Dr. Srinivasa Durasala. We have taken note of all the points that were discussed here, Doctor, and we hope to pass on this to the relevant government officials. I hope they will take serious note of that. And thank you very much once again for the great panel we put together. Thank you very much.